Hello everyone and welcome to F.Y.I. Uxbridge. I'm your host Barry Giles, station manager here at Uxbridge Community Television. F.Y.I. Uxbridge is a program about the people, places, and events that are going on here in our lovely town of Uxbridge. And today my guest is Stephen Sette, the town manager for Uxbridge. Stephen, thank you very much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So we usually start off with all my guests. Why don't you tell us about yourself and how you became town manager here in Uxbridge?
Great. First off, I'm a Rhode Island resident. I've lived in the Blackstone Valley all my life. I grew up in Cumberland, Rhode Island, graduated Cumberland High School, went on to Stonehill College in Easton, Mass. Live in Gloucester, Rhode Island, which is right off of Route 102, literally 2 towns away from Uxbridge if you looked at it. This is my second career. I've had an earlier career where I worked for 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry, both in sales and sales management for over 20 years in sales management. Retired because of the way the industry was changing in 2008, and then began a second career instead of managing people, began managing towns. And I started in Richmond, Rhode Island, right around March of 2010. In fact, my first day was right after the historic floods in 2010, and literally traced from Interstate 95 all the way down to a housing development where there's probably well over 1.5 million gallons of water literally around one house. But we had traced what the path of the water was to try to fix that. I spent 2.5 years in Richmond, and then I was hired as the town administrator in Hopedale, Mass, where I spent about almost 7 years in Hopedale. Great experience in Hopedale, really loved the area, and saw that this position was open. And since I drove through town and drove by town hall, basically for all that time, I was very familiar with Uxbridge, and and I knew there were some challenges in Uxbridge that I thought that I might be able to bring some a different perspective to help the community, and interviewed to the process, and thankfully I was hired by the Board of Selectmen, and I started here in Uxbridge about 6 months ago now. So it seems like it hasn't been that long, but it has. It's been 6 months.
Right.
And so this is my first experience with the budget process in the town, and how that part of town government.
Right. I believe you came into our fall town meeting.
Yes,
the
I did.
First time.
In October.
And so on.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, throw them right into the fire. Why not?
Yeah.
Speaking of town meeting, that's one of the things we're going to be discussing today. Let's talk about, of course, we're recording this program during the COVID-19 pandemic and things like that. And a lot of things have changed, and the town has had to adapt for different things. One of the things they changed was the actual date of town meeting. We're usually doing it in May. Now we're doing it June. So let's talk about some of the changes that have been made, and where is it happening? What's going on?
Yeah, good question. And I think people will see some things different about town meeting this year than what they've seen in the past. The biggest one is where social distancing guidelines is going to affect all of us, and it's going to affect the meeting as well. We did go to Valley Chapel. Now, normally Valley Chapel, where town meetings been held the last few years, can seat at capacity over 1,000 people. But because of COVID-19 and be able to keep 6-foot spacing between us, at the absolute minimum of doing that, we have right now we can seat about 120.
Okay.
Town meeting is about average, that number, maybe a little slightly higher, but we also assume that there's going to be a number of people who come as couples,
right.
And so they'll be able to sit close to each other versus having to spread out. But that will also determine where other people sit.
Right.
So I believe the capacity that we normally have for town meeting, we will be able to do. The town clerk had some experience recently with the town election, so they're going to set up the registration for town meetings similar to the way they did the elections. We have shield guards ready for the people checking people in. When you walk in, there's going to be stations to sanitize your hands. There'll be masks available. All the things that we have all gotten used to with respect to the social distancing guidelines.
As people say, the new normal.
Yeah, right. But, you know, and I know some people, you know, the whole mask thing, I think people have some issue, but, you know, we will have them available for everybody to wear the mask. The other thing we're going to do is the moderator, Ed Mahari, has determined that we're going to limit town meeting to 90 minutes.
Okay.
So whatever business we can conduct within 90 minutes, we'll conduct. Unfortunately, if we don't get through everything we have on the warrant, we're going to have to come back another evening to do that. We've also taken some time to go through the warrant to see what can we strip out so we can condense that time. Town council's advises us there's at least 4 articles that we can combine together to pass in what they call a consent article.
Okay.
So it's just one vote to approve it. And usually those are things that are pretty standard on a town meeting warrant anyway, that really don't have a whole lot of discussion normally anyway. So we're going to have that. We've taken some articles, and especially the articles that have to do with any capital spending, and we're going to move those to the October fall meeting. And the reason for that is, in my feeling in my discussions with both the financial team in town and the finance committee, was we're not sure what revenue is going to look like at least through the first quarter of next year and potentially in the first half of the year. So I didn't want to commit to any spending on the town's part until we knew what kind of money we had coming in. So we decided that there's at least maybe 9 or 10 articles that we're going to be able to push to the October meeting because they all deal with more cap. So that focus will be at that meeting in October, in addition to some of the articles that we normally have that are around zoning or you know, street acceptances and stuff. We're going to do all those in October.
Okay.
Where hopefully we'll be a little bit further removed from this, and we'll be able to conduct, you know, a meeting without a time limit and so forth on it. And the moderator's going to have, just as the rules of the meeting, some other, you know, limiting discussion on certain things and all those kind of things, so we can try to keep the meeting moving and moving along. Fortunately, for as we move into town meeting, both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee have voted favorable action on virtually all the articles that we're going to be, especially the articles we're going to be dealing with at town meeting, which was good. Articles that, you know, the school budget, you know, had some discussion, but there was no adjustment to the school budget other than what the school committee made. So I'd like to think we're all going into town meeting, you know, fairly unified, and to me that means we have a solid budget that we have going forward. There were some challenges with the budget, and one of the challenges was the fact that prior to COVID, I had my budget completed, gave it to the selectmen, gave it to the finance committee, department heads, and we were in pretty good shape on the budget. We actually were about, we still had a spread of about $370,000 to what our limit would be. So we really were in pretty good shape and knew that potentially some things were going to happen that were going to increase that gap even more. Well, of course, COVID comes and state revenue's off. So what we ended up adjusting with myself, Michelle Laramie, the accountant, and Lisa Trost, the town's treasurer, we sat down and we said, well, what should we anticipate as a reduction in the state funding to the town? And what we did was reduced by 15%.
Wow.
Or any revenue coming in, and that was also local revenues too. So we went from being about 370 to the positive to $980,000 that we had to take out.
Oh, wow.
So we went about that process, and again, over time we did it. We worked with the finance committee to do it. We did have one thing in particular that happened that really, was a real positive for the town. Early on, when I first started, we had a review by the rating agencies, because at the time they were questioning what the town's bond rating was, and so at the time we had our review, and they weren't really in a position to say we can change the rating back to what it was, because myself and both Michelle and Lisa were still very new. All of us are about 6 months tenure. We had a second rating conference right after, recently, and it was determined that they thought everything was in real good shape. We put a lot of controls in that hadn't been there in the past, and all the things that the financial community wants to see. At the same time, we were made aware of some bonds that we had, some debt that the town had, we were going to be able to refinance. And when we went to market, well, initially before COVID, we were going to do it, unfortunately we weren't able to because of COVID. But when we got to this point, the market had come back, and they said, "Well, you wanted to try to do it now," and we did. It was perfect timing because we were coming into town meeting. Turned out that we were able to refinance $10.5 million worth of debt that we had, and the rate we got was at 0.75%, so less than 1%, which is almost basically the lending agency giving you the money with no interest.
Right.
So we were able to save $230,000, just by doing that refinancing as part of the budget. So that helped us get to where we needed to be. And at last look, we're back to the positive. We're about 118,000 or so, 118,000 to what the limit is. So fortunately, we're in good shape.
Great, that sounds excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for that on behalf of the residents
As a
of
taxpayer.
town. Is there any particular warrant or anything that you think will be, contested or heated?
Yeah,
usually the budget is usually there are people that have questions about budgets and things like that.
I think there's still some department budgets people might have some
not
questions.
Cable though.
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, ironically, the cable budget gets voted as its own article.
Yes.
And so I don't anticipate a problem with that one. There might be a couple of departments that there will be, and it's all based on when people look at the budget. My plan is to try to give as much information as possible to everybody prior to the meeting. In fact, I have a copy of the budget with every line item listed, what was appropriated last year, what we're suggesting this year, and where there might be a gap for people. It'll be online tomorrow. I have everybody proofing it right now just to make sure all our numbers are right. So we're giving everybody as much information as we can. The warrant's been available for quite some time. But I said, other than a couple of departments, I don't foresee a lot of things that might turn out to be negatives. There is one article having to do with the sale of land on Millville Road that there might be some questions on, because potentially if the bike path comes through town, it would go through where that property is, and whether or not we would get assurances from the owner that they would give us the access we need, or the people doing the bike path need to get through there. So we have that there. Other than that, I think the articles we're going to address at town meeting are going to be fairly standard and pretty much just related to the budget, I guess is the best way to describe it.
So the information is going to be available on the town website.
Town website,
which is uxbridge-ma.gov.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll put that information at the end. So,
Yep.
all right. So, we touched base on town meeting, and so that's going to be 7 p.m.
It's going to be 7 p.m. on Wednesday, June 17th.
Okay, and check-in.
Check-in, I would say, I would suggest people check in about starting at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Because it's going to be a little bit different check-in process, and that way we can make sure we get everybody in safely, seated, where they need to be, and then we'll begin the meeting at that point.
Great. All right. So let's move on. Now that we touch base on town meeting, let's talk about town hall.
Sure.
Okay. Once again, with everything closing down and public access, what's presently going on at town hall?
Town hall, it's been a challenge, to say the least. When the pandemic, really kind of hit, what we ended up doing was following what the governor's orders were, and basically only, essential employees came to work every day. Myself and maybe a core group of 3 or 4 people, where people have been there every day since the crisis started. Fortunately, we were able to have the rest of the staff work from home, and we actually were able to function quite well with people working remotely. So we continue to do that. A week or so ago, I started bringing back people back to work in the office. We're still keeping a staggered schedule, so we have 2 on, 2 off type thing right now. And the days people aren't at the office, they're still working from home. So we're continuing to do that. The challenge has been when we're going to bring the public back in, for meetings, for just for general business and so forth. I know from looking at surrounding towns, everybody's probably going to be in that process towards the end of the month, and we're gonna do the same thing. Initially, we're gonna bring people in by appointment only, so between 10 and 2. What I'd like to try to do is set something up where people can meet in the lower town hall to limit
more
the
space.
exposure,
Yep.
right? And also, again, from like we're doing here,
Right.
have more space to meet, people to meet, and take proper precautions. So we have done already. We have germ barriers in place in the offices now. So when we do have people coming into the building on a more normal basis, we're able to do that. We have all the other proper PPE in place. So we will be beginning to do that, and then gradually we'll have meetings and so forth that come in as well. The biggest thing is going to be after something's done to make sure that work areas are properly sanitized and
Right.
and those kind of things. But recently PPE's become a lot more readily available.
Right.
And so that's all starting to come back into the pipeline, so we're able to get those things. But employees have gloves, masks, and sanitizer, and so we're in good shape with that right now. But that'll be the process.
Great. So that you're looking at towards the end of the month.
Towards the end of the month,
Great.
yeah, and we'll announce it. Obviously,
Yep.
We'll ask for your help.
Yep.
To get that word out as well, in addition to website and press release into the Telegram and and other local
Right.
papers as well.
Great. And people can reach out through the telephone and make appointments if needed and so on.
Yeah, we'll have that. We'll have that process. It'll be basically just whatever department you're looking to meet with. Call that department. They'll have a log. The other thing we'll have to do, and this is the new normal as we
Right.
talked about. We will have to log people in
Yeah.
when they come in is part of contact tracing.
Right.
So that if there is ever an outbreak, we know who was exposed
Right.
and all those kind of things, or somebody tests positive or whatever, we'll know.
Great.
And who else has exposure.
Great. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss, or do you think we touched base on everything?
I think we have,
Yeah.
we have, but
Okay.
I would hope that people will really use the website. There is a lot of good information on the website. What we did find is through this process, people got more used to doing things remotely. I'm in the process of looking to purchase some new permitting software that's going to streamline some of those processes even more and make it easy for people from the outside to interact with town government.
Great.
Biggest thing is I would hope people would want to interact with town government.
Yes.
And even through this process, if people have questions on the budget, have questions on, any particular department numbers or anything along those lines, or anything even in the warrant, please don't hesitate to ask. You can contact me through the town website. If you go to the town manager page, my email address is there. You can contact me there. There's a way just through the website in general. A general question can come in, but know that I usually return all my phone calls and answer all the questions, and especially if it's something like this, I want to make sure that people have as much information as possible. And that was our commitment early on.
Right.
What I said when I closed out with the finance committee the other night was, we're going to do a debrief after the meeting's over and talk about the things we did well this time, but also what can we do better next time,
Right.
so that we could even have this process even more consolidated.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's a whole new world for us out there, and
Yeah.
it's, we're all learning how to deal with this situation and how we can be efficient and continue to keep running as a town for the residents of town. So, well, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I hope to have you on a future show, maybe something on a regular basis, keep the community informed what's going on.
If you get a little stove set up, we'll do a little cooking.
Yeah,
and all
hey,
that stuff too.
I'm all for that.
Me too.
I've been getting into woodworking lately,
Oh,
so
there
maybe
you go. Yeah, we can do something like that too.
we could do that. Awesome, great. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
So on. If you have any ideas for the show, or anybody you know that might want to come on the show to promote an event or talk about things here in the town of Uxbridge, you can reach out to me. My email address is bgiles, Giles, at uxbridge-ma.gov, or you can go to the town website, uxbridge-ma.gov, look for cable access, and you'll find the link for contact information. Thanks again for watching F.Y.I. Uxbridge.